There we go. All right, we got Richard. Hey,
Hi,
I appreciate you taking the time.
absolutely honored to be asked.
Sure. So you started your career in Chicago. In 2010, you had co-founded a multi-million dollar building company called Centric. You've done multiple years generating over eight figures in revenue, located in Kansas City, Missouri. And you like to spend your spare time kind of giving back to the community when you can.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good synopsis, except for the first part. I didn't start in Chicago.
okay,
Yeah, I was born in Minneapolis, but grew up in Denver, Colorado.
okay.
And when I graduated high school, I wanted to study architecture. So I looked around at schools that were, 8 to 10 hours away from Denver, so I could get a little bit, further away from home. And I made the decision to go to the University of Kansas. And I like to say it's because of the architecture school and the distance, and it was great, and it was all those things. But also, I happened to be dating a girl at high school who went to the University of Kansas. And the reason I tell that story is it's amazing the kind of decisions you make when you're 17, 18 years old that set the path for your life. We broke up October of our freshman year in college, right? And I had made that decision. And we're friends to this day, and we laugh about it. But it's just interesting where your life takes you based on certain decisions. When I graduated from college, moved to Kansas City, basically because I had a job here. And I thought I would be in Kansas City for a couple of years. I didn't know it very well, having grown up in Denver. I liked it, but it didn't strike me as one of the cool cities that architects would like to be a part of. I thought I'd be in Austin or Boston or San Francisco or some other place within a couple of years. And nearly 30 years later, I'm still in Kansas City, and I've made it my home. Built business here, put down roots, and it's been a fantastic place. The cool thing about it is that Kansas City has grown with my career, and so I've been able to be a part of some really kind of city changing initiatives here, and it's become a much cooler place to live than maybe it was in 1994 when I first moved here. And so there's the big fish, small pond kind of theory. I love Kansas City. It's a great place. So yeah, I started my career in architecture. I was a designer of sports facilities. So there's the sort of center of sports architecture in the world is all from Kansas City. It grew out of a couple of projects that were seminal, and then firms started, and people split off and started their own firms. And so there's a group of about 8 to 10 firms in Kansas City that all they do is design sports facilities around the world. So I was with firms that did that for about 8 to 10 years. And then I decided that I liked the business side of design and construction more than the design side. I love design, but I really enjoyed business. And so I went to work for general contractors in a sales, marketing, business development role. I knew all the architects. They were my friends, so I wasn't competing with them. I was actually working with them on deals, and spent time with three kind of two large regional contractors and then a large national contractor. And at that last large national GC is where I met my partner, Steve Swanson. And he and I decided to take a business unit that we had been growing within that company and start our own. And so in June of 2010, almost exactly 13 years ago, we launched our company Centric.
Cool. And you said you kind of started how a lot of the sports facilities are created today. You
Well,
had some
I didn't
innovations.
personally, but
Okay.
Kansas City as a sort of sports architecture mecca certainly did. For those of you who are sports fans, you probably know that Arrowhead Stadium, where the Chiefs play, and Kauffman Stadium, where the Royals play, are right adjacent to each other. And they were the first stadiums built after a number of big round donuts in downtown cities like Cincinnati and Pittsburgh and St. Louis that
Mm.
tried to accommodate both sports and did neither very well. This sports complex said, no, let's have a football stadium and a baseball stadium and make them good and perfect for those sports. They also introduced a lot of new concepts like club level seating and suites that were enclosed, and a lot of things that now are in every stadium. But because of that experience in the early 70s, the architects that designed those buildings started developing an expertise in it. And so that has grown into something that Kansas City is known for.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have a hand in any of those innovations?
So later on, I worked primarily on 3 or 4 facilities, but I worked on an arena in downtown Washington, D.C. for the Washington Capitals and Wizards. And that was built literally over 2 metro lines, which was pretty amazing. I worked on a football stadium for the campus at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. That brought football back to campus after many years it had been it's sort of been exiled. It went through some NCAA violations, and they brought it back to campus, and a few others. I was very lucky to work on those projects. If you're going to be an architect, it's one of the sexiest type of projects you can work on, is sports facilities.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends still do that. I don't get the chance to anymore, but I certainly admire all of the advances that they've been part of.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious about like the process and the mindset that it takes to do what you did, to go from no company existing at all to creating it and then bringing it to a gigantic successful company. Do you think you could take me back to like before you had started with it, and what your life looked like and what your thought process was, how you like thought to yourself, maybe I want more, I know I can do this, just maybe paint a picture of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Comfortable here. So about 4 or 5 years after I graduated from school, I was still working full time, and I decided I wanted to get an MBA, which is not a traditional career path for an architect. Architects typically are more artistic, innovative, creative, less focused on numbers and business and growth and that kind of stuff. But it fascinated me, and so I went and got an MBA at night. I had to take almost every hour you possibly could because I had no business education in my undergrad at all. It was all architecture. So I didn't have any basis in knowledge in accounting and finance and economics and, all that kind of stuff. So when I was in that program, I switched from being in marketing to entrepreneurship. I didn't even know that existed when I started in the program. The reason I did that is because business schools, when they teach marketing, it's about marketing products, things that you put on shelves that you buy at the grocery store, airlines or cars. It was about buying things. And marketing in the world that I live in, of professional services, is more about relationships and people. And so I was intrigued by an entrepreneurship class, and I took that. And I think that everything from that day forward is probably why I am where I am today. I got fascinated with the concept of starting a business, coming up with a product or service that either is brand new or fills some need in the market or does it a little bit better as a better mousetrap. And from that moment on, I knew I was going to have my own business at some point. I just didn't know when. I did start my own small architecture firm coming off of finishing my MBA because I just really felt the need to do it, and ran that for about a year, and then folded into a sports practice again. But that love of owning my own business never went away. And so when I connected with a colleague at the company I was with, J.E. Dunn Construction, who also was very growth minded, very aggressive in terms of going out and winning business and convincing clients to hire him, and building this business within a bigger company. We started in this very large $4 billion construction company, a division that was focused on very small projects, $500,000, $1 million projects, which is very small in the realm of construction. And we'd grown that business to about $80 million in annual revenue. And there was a day we were together playing golf, actually, and I said, how much of the work that we're getting do you think we're getting because we have this business card from this very highly respected company? And how much of it are we going to have to overcome it because people say, why would this big company want this small job? And he said, I probably think it's about 70-30 that we have to overcome the fact that we're with this big company. And so I just kind of looked at him, and he looked at me, and he's like, so why don't we go do it for ourselves? And I said, exactly. So we, from that moment on, we started planning the launch of Centric, and it took probably 9 months of really thoughtful planning before we walked in and quit our jobs. I don't think that you want to do that with just total, disregard for the fact that you have kids in school, you've got a mortgage, you've got commitments, your responsibilities. And we were both, I was 37 and he was 39, I think at the time. So we were right in the middle of raising kids and families, and probably not the best time to start a company. But what I've realized is that to be an entrepreneur, at least in the professional service space, you have to have had enough experience that people trust you. It would be tough to start a company like that when you were 22 or 23, unlike a tech company or something like that. But you don't want to wait so long that your life is kind of set, right? That you've been with a company long enough and they have, retirement plans put in place for you and all those things that you start going, oh man, I don't want to walk away from all that. So I think there's kind of a magical window between, for at least for a service business, in my experience, between about 35 and 45, that you got to do it in there. You got to be experienced enough, but not too far down the line. And so that's when we did it. And I'll tell you, at the beginning of starting a company, it is the most thrilling thing in the world. I mean, I can't think of a more exciting time in my work life than the day we didn't even have an office yet. And we walked into a coffee shop and sat down with our new computers and like, okay, what do we do now? Didn't have a client, didn't have a project. And it was just nose to the grindstone hustle, call everybody, let them know what you're doing, get press, go to events, be out and about, get to know as many people as you possibly can. Be authentic. I think it's difficult when you're very salesy about stuff. You have to be yourself and be authentic. But it wasn't long before people started saying, hey, we might like to work with you. We did forget that business card that we had, that was a very large, reputable firm, did bring some sense of security with it, right? So a client knew if they hired that company, everything was going to be fine. And you think that they like you, and they do, but they also go, ooh, but now you're a brand new company. And so it took us a while before we were having the opportunities that we did at that previous firm. But within about 8 months or so, we were able to start paying ourselves salary. I think we hired our first employee, we were 4 or 5 months old. So we had to put all of our chips in the middle of the table, cashed out 401ks, lived on whatever, that credit cards, whatever needed to happen. And I don't think there's any other way to do it. When you've put that much on the middle of the table, and it's your money and it's your future, it's incredible how hard you'll work to be successful.
I imagine that took a lot of courage to leave a job. Like you said that was a sweet spot, and I'm sure it is, but it still took a lot of courage to leave that job and start like that.
Yeah, it's funny when we looked back at the data. There was a big meltdown in the banking industry in 2007, 2008, which caused a recession in 08, 09. Well, construction is a lagging industry, right? Construction is one where we're working today on things that were decided on a year ago by the clients. And so that recession did not hit construction until 2010. And the worst month in construction spending in that whole thing was June, the month we started. And so sometimes I look back and I go, man, I can't believe we did that. That was so, you say courageous, I might say stupid, I mean, different words, mean the same thing in some ways. But we, when like I said, when the chips are in the middle of the table, you don't have any other choice. You just go at it. And what we found is, at the beginning of the company, the highs were high. They were like, you win a job or something happens, you hire a new person, you're excited about it. But then those days where things weren't as good, there's not as much cash in the bank as you'd like, or maybe you lost money on a project, or you lost the opportunity to build a project. The lows were low. You'd go from thinking we're going to be the greatest thing from sliced bread to, oh my God, are we going to be bankrupt? And that might be a period of 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
And what I've found is, over time, that's the entrepreneurial kind of cycle. And the highs and lows start to be a little bit lower. So they're not as dramatic, right? They're not as, oh my God, or, oh my God, you still get excited, you still get disappointed. But as the company grows and develops its own sense of who it is and what it is, you start to worry less about, are we going to go bankrupt, and more about, hey, how are we going to take care of our people in a better way, and that kind of thing. And so part of me misses the highs and lows of that first, those first few months. And part of me is like, I don't ever need to experience that ever again.
Can you tell me a little bit more about like, I know you said you took like 7 to 9 months to plan it beforehand.
Yeah.
You were at JE Dunn. What did it look like when you were there and when you were thinking about it? And how much time did you spend in your free time just planning? Like, what did that time period look like?
Yeah. So of course, I didn't spend any time during the workday working on my plan for my new company. Um, once you have it in your mind that this is what you're going to do, if you're a true entrepreneur, it becomes an obsession. It's very difficult to think about anything else. I of course did my job day to day, but we were sort of constantly planning, thinking, putting together a plan. I'm a planner by nature. I can't make a decision unless I have fully fleshed out that I think it's the right thing. And for
Similar.
me, that requires research, and it requires data and calculation and projections and forecasts. And so I did and I say I think my partner would agree. I did the lion's share of it, a pretty detailed business plan that stipulated, how much work we were going to find, go after, win, put in place, how much profit we were going to make. When would that mean we would hire new people? When, in what markets we were going to work in, how we were going to position ourselves in those markets. I did it was a pretty good, sensible business plan. Of course, this is again 2010. Construction is in a recession. So the bank said, man, this is a great business plan. We're still not going to loan you any money
Hmm.
because it's too risky. And so that's why we had to really bootstrap everything from the beginning. But I had probably the most impactful instructor in my MBA program. He said something that really stuck with me. He said, for a lot of people that ask entrepreneurs, how could you take that kind of risk, right? Like you put everything on the line. He said a true entrepreneur would feel like it's more risky to put your life in the hands of somebody else, right? That if you are going to work every day for a job that somebody else is basically not taking care of you. There are a lot of people that have jobs where they are absolutely producing and developing their own work and all that kind of stuff. But that puts you in somebody else's control, and a true entrepreneur needs to be under their own control. And that feels actually safer to them. And when he said that, it was definitely a light bulb for me went off. I thought, I feel more safe if I'm driving the train than if somebody else is, even if it starts to go off the rails. I want to be at the driver's seat of that train.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean,
Mhm.
God forbid something does go wrong, like a 2008, for example,
Yeah.
and then you're
Yeah.
left with what? No skill. Well, the skills that you have in the
Right.
job, but
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
And you're just, you don't have control over it. Now, not everybody feels that way. There are many, many, many people who are very successful in business that don't ever feel the need to start one. And that's totally fine. That's the vast majority. But for people who did, I think you'll find most of them they would feel that need to be in the driver's seat.
yeah. I'm also curious, like, was architecture something that you feel like you were always drawn to, or was it like you found yourself there, and then once you were there, you were like, I'm gonna make the best I possibly can out of this, and then developed it?
Yeah, that's an awesome question because I have a daughter who's about to go to college in the fall, and she's thinking about majors and everything, and I'm like, don't worry about it. You're 17 years old. You don't know what you want to do for the rest of your life. Go explore, try different things, take classes in different areas, find out what you like, who you are. Architecture programs by their nature are just very prescriptive. So it was a 5-year program to get your bachelor's degree at the time. Now you can get a master's degree in 5 years. And almost every single class was scripted out for you. There were not a lot of, I think I had 3 electives in 5 years in architecture school. And so I realized very quickly that I had made the decision to study something that didn't have a lot of flexibility. I was either going to do it or I wasn't. It's
Hmm.
not like I'm going to take history and also philosophy, right? It's, you're in it. I had an interest in architecture my whole life. My grandfather was an architect. My parents, while not architects, were students of architecture and art and culture, and they had an interest in it. And we lived in an interesting house and all that kind of stuff. And I had a drafting table from a very young age, and I used it to do homework and draw and that kind of
Where?
stuff. I don't think I realized how I thought architecture was drafting, and it's not. It's problem solving. It's taking a complex set of inputs and creating something hopefully beautiful that also solves as a resource to whether house people or place people shop or go to work or whatever. And sometimes very high aspiring spaces like churches and cathedrals or sports arenas. But it's a problem solving at its core. So in architecture school, I really, after first couple of times of going, do I really want to do this? Once I set my mind to it, I realized that it was a valuable degree, whether or not I ended up practicing, because it made me a good creative problem solver. And I don't practice architecture day to day anymore, but I keep my license. I call myself an architect. I'm involved in the built environment very intimately. And I am very proud that that's what I can call myself, because I do think I'm a problem solver. A creative problem solver is what I do every day. It's just not what most people would call architecture, but
Mhm.
that's where I learned how to.
Got it. And what was it about architecture that drew you to it initially? What made you fall in love with it from a young age?
Yeah. So, it's something everybody experiences, right? Any building you walk into is the product of an architect. Some buildings are good, some buildings are bad, but somebody decided where to put the door and how it relates to the street and how big it's going to be and what it's going to look like and what materials and everything. I think, and this is a little trite because I've heard a lot of people in architecture say this, but it is a good, healthy balance between creativity, but also numbers and math, geometry, that kind of thing. And I wouldn't say I'm the best, or I wouldn't have said I'm the best at anything, but I'm pretty good at a lot of things. And I think that was a good melding of practical skills, artistic skills, and quite frankly, it was nice to graduate with a thing. I had a title. I could go and get a job as an architect, and that was kind of nice too. The practical side of me likes that as well.
Cool.
So, yeah,
Um, I know you had mentioned, you touched on it briefly, how when you were at Centric there were a lot of highs, a lot of lows. It felt almost like a roller coaster. And I'm
yeah.
curious how long that lasted before it started to even out.
Yeah. So it was a gradual process. It wasn't like one day all of a sudden it was less harrowing or ecstatic. So I'm not even really sure I could put a time limit on it. But I will say, once you start hiring employees, um, you have a duty to the company and to them to be a resource and to be a little bit, to ground the company a little bit. If um if you as a leader, manager, whatever your title is, if you're leading people and your emotions are doing this, that's not healthy for them. It's not healthy for you either, quite frankly. It's just you can't help it, right, when you're
Yeah.
starting out. And so just the act of adding people to the team, who my partner and I, and at the time we actually had three partners, just bringing those people onto the team and knowing that their livelihoods are to a certain extent at stake, that you're to a certain extent responsible for them, whether that's bringing in new business that they have to work on or coaching them to be successful. And I think that brings it down a little bit. And I mean, to this day, my business partner and I have a text string where we will say things to each other that we wouldn't necessarily tell anybody else in the company, right? Sometimes we love each other, sometimes we hate each other, but we always know that the other one is the one person we can say those things to. And so what you have to do is start to let that be your person for your emotional ups and downs, and
Yeah.
then try to keep it together for the company. The ecstatic part is great to share with the company, right? You want to be excited. Wow, we want a new job or whatever. You want to get them riled up. What I found difficult as we've grown bigger is I can keep my emotions in check for the downs. I find it harder to be
Mm.
as up as I need to be to keep the 150 people here all excited all the
Yeah.
time. That takes a lot of energy. So,
When you're picking a partner for your business, obviously an extremely important decision. I'm sure you've had good, I'm sure you've had bad. What qualities should you be looking for in a partner for your business?
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people would say find complementary skills. And I'll go into that because I think that's important. But I think maybe even more important than that is finding somebody that'll call you on your bullshit.
Hmm.
You know, it's easy when it's easy to everybody has blind spots, right? Everybody has the things that they don't know that they either overlook or maybe don't drill down into enough, or they drill down too much and they're not seeing the big picture. Everybody has blind spots. And I think the best partner that you can have, and this is probably true about any partnership you might have, is somebody who knows and respects you for what you're good at and wants you to bring those skills to the table because likely they don't have them, but also knows you well enough to know your blind spots and to say, hey, by the way, that thing you do, that's showing. And you know, there in some ways, my partner and I were married, right? We all of our money, all of our financial future, everything was so together in the middle of the table in that pile of chips that we know everything about each other. And, you know, sometimes we want to kill each other. I mean, not going to lie, but he knows my blind spots. I know his. He knows how to tell me, how to coach me. I know how to coach him. And we also know when to lift the other person up. You know, if I come into the office and I'm either angry or frustrated or worried about something, inevitably he's like, it'll be fine.
Hmm.
And vice versa, you know, and that balance of helping each other out, I think is really important. The skill sets, definitely. I mean, if you have a company that's making a widget, you need somebody who knows how to sell the widget. You need somebody who knows how to make the widget, and you need somebody who knows how to support all the functions of the widget, whether it's finance, HR, all that kind of stuff. And if you have those three functions in a partnership, you can do all of them. The minute you are missing a skill, you're going to have to hire it, which is expensive.
Hmm.
And then after a while, you realize it's actually cheaper for me to hire out this skill so that I can go sell more widgets, or I can go think on a higher level how we're going to make them. But yeah, partners are just like picking a partner in life, a spouse. It's very important to be able to complement each other.
Did you ever have trouble drawing a line of, okay, this is a skill I have, this is a skill you have, we're missing this one, so we have to hire it, versus like, I guess, did you ever have trouble saying, I think I can do everything, and then drawing that line and knowing you have to hire somebody?
That's a really good question too. The first hires, because they weren't the highest level hires, because we just didn't have the money. We were hiring pretty inexperienced people to probably step up into roles they weren't quite ready for yet. Some of them are still with us to this day, and they're some of our highest level leaders in the company because they've been through it all. That may come down to one of my blind spots, which is control.
Hmm.
I never thought that I wasn't the best person to look at the finances of the company. And, you know, there's good and bad there, right? The good is I do know it, and I know it like a hawk. And actually my partner does too. And it actually freaks people out that we can, you know, zero in on something really quickly, all the way from up here down to there. Where we've gotten better at hiring people who know what they're doing better than we do is probably in that operational functions of the business, you know, finding people who know about safety and quality control. And you know, there will be times where we're going to hire, I hope I hire a person who's a better salesperson than me at some point. You know, higher level finance knowledge, all that kind of stuff. There's going to come a time where, as we ease away from the business, which we will do over the next few years, and turn it over to the employees, that we are going to have rock stars. I would prefer we develop them internally and not bring somebody in over the top. But if that's what the business needs and that's the right thing for the business, we'll do it. Ideally, they've all kind of grown up with us, and there's going to be a day where they see something on those financials that I don't even see. And I love those days when somebody on our team goes, did you think about? And I go, oh, I didn't. That's
Hmm.
awesome. I love those days.
Do you ever get, maybe worried is the wrong word, but worried that somebody like you would come along who was so good that they had the potential to go out and start their own thing with the knowledge that they developed at your company?
Yeah. So it's already happened to a certain
Okay.
extent. So we've had 4 or 5 people that have come through our company and decided for whatever reason they wanted to move on and do their own thing. Some of those people have been in industries that are complementary to ours, and some are straight out competitors. We even had 2 employees buy one of our subsidiaries and take it and take it on their own.
Oh,
I always think that's awesome, as much as I'm sad to lose the person, because typically if somebody starts their own business, they're probably pretty good at what they do, and you don't want to lose those people. At the same time, it kind of fills you with pride to know that whatever they learned when they stopped at Centric and spent time there, that was their launching pad to go do something else.
yeah.
And that's kind of exciting. There's one of our ex associates, he probably left, gosh, almost 10 years ago now. He started a flooring business and it's killing it. He's doing so well. And we meet for coffee once or twice, probably about twice a year, coffee or breakfast. And he'll bounce ideas off me and I'll bounce ideas off him. And I think he saw it as me being a mentor to him when we started. And I think now, if not equal, he may be a mentor to me. And I think that's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
To take it one step back, we were talking about complementary traits.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk about some of the traits that you and your partner complement each other with, and maybe a time where you saw that play out.
Yeah. So I think the single greatest reason that we saw the growth we have since we've started the company is where we align, because we are very different people, and anybody that knows both of us will tell you that. But where we align is more important than where we go apart when we diverge.
Mm-hmm.
We are both aggressive about wanting to grow, right? We want growth. We want the next cool thing. We want better. We're willing to try, be innovative, not say, oh, well, just, nobody does it like that. We can't try that idea. We are both very interested in growth. And to that end, we work together very closely to grow the business. So my primary job for the company is relationships in the community. I'm very involved in Kansas City. I know a lot of people. There's people that have joked I'm like being the mayor. I don't think that's true, but I have kind of prided myself on being somebody who's a connector, who knows people from different areas, who brings people together, and who spends time out in the community. My partner Steve is not. He's more head down in the office. He's here at 8. He leaves at 5, right? But where we align in growing the company is that I can say, hey, I've got this new relationship. They've got a project they want to talk to us about. I'm not the expert when it comes to how much something costs or how long it takes or how we build it or any of that kind of stuff. So my first intro was to Steve, and Steve was also excited. He would have never met that person on his own. But now that that person's through the door, he can take it and go, oh, you want to build a building? Well, I'm going to tell you what it's going to cost and how long it's going to take. And here's some innovative ideas for how to do it. I could have never done that. Mm-hmm. And so while we were aligned on let's land the client, we had differing skills in how we got to the landing of the client. And when they called and said, you're hired, we're high-fiving, and we both respect what the other brought to the table. So one of the things I've been trying to instill in some of our folks is that if you're growing up in the industry in an operational role, like where you know more about the nuts and bolts, partner up with somebody who's really good at the relationship side. Mm-hmm. And you two go have that same dynamic with the business you're going to go after and bring into the company. And that's been cool to see people do that.
Yeah, I think the respect is a huge piece there.
It really is. Yeah, you're right.
Now I wanted to ask this as well. So in terms of, so you're starting the business, obviously, especially in the beginning, there's going to be big ups and big downs. I'll let you choose which one of these you want to go with. But what was the first or the largest obstacle that you faced that was the most difficult to overcome?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many at so many different times and things that may have seemed huge at one time. Now you look back and you go, it wasn't that big of a deal. I would say the biggest challenge that we have overcome as a company didn't happen until about 2017. So we were about 7 years old.
Wow.
And what happened was we actually, yes, we had gotten engaged on a project that was a historic renovation. And we had a there was an exterior wall that needed to be repaired. And we had a difference of agreement with the owner about how to repair it and what it would cost. And we really felt strongly that a certain way needed to happen. And he really felt strongly a different way. And we got into our first dispute, like lawsuit. And we didn't prevail in that. It came out, the arbitrator said, look, you know what, you guys might have disagreed. But you guys are the experts. And at the end of the day, you had to figure out the right way to do it. And you didn't do a good job of that. And
Wow.
that was a smack in the head, you know, because it not only did it cost us money and a lot of time, right, to go to that level of dispute, but it also it just was disheartening, right? Because it brought you down, and you go back and go, God, we should have just done this way from the beginning, and then we would have avoided that. We didn't know. Then we've also had times where, through no fault of our own, we take a lot of risk. When we do say we do a $10 million project, well, $9 million of that is subcontracted to somebody, right? If one of those subcontractors fails, we have the obligation to step in and finish their work, because we work for the owner. And we had a contractor fail during COVID, subcontractor, and we were out a lot of money for a lot of time while we tried to get back from their insurance and bonding company, get back the money that we were owed. And it was touch and go. I mean, we were actually worried about, whether we'd hit our line of credit balance and actually be out of money. And we resolved that about a year and a half ago, and we're in great shape now. But those two things, where it's not the ups and downs of a day thing, but it was like really tore at you for a long time. And that whole time you still had to go out and get new work, hire new people, be the leader, be the CEO, be excited, while inside you're going, are we okay? Like, are we going to make it through
Wow.
this thing? And I think that, and it definitely had its toll on the company, because it's hard to not have that be hanging over as a cloud. Getting through things like that, it's like working your body out or working your mind out. You're stronger after that. It was hard, it sucked, you were sweating, you thought you were gonna collapse, but at the end you're like, man, I have lighter in my step, and I'm stronger, and I'm tougher. Those were more recent. We did go through a buyout of a partner. Like I said, when we started, we had 3, and we thought 3 was going to be perfect, because everyone agrees with each other, or everyone. Sorry, there's always a decision to be made if there's 3. But we found that after a little while, we tended to be on one side of arguments, and this third partner was on the other, and we went through a buyout, and it wasn't easy. There's obviously disagreements about that, but we got through that okay. Early on, it was littler stuff, or at least what seems to me to be littler now, is, oh, we lost this project, or this person decided they didn't want to come to work for us, that kind of thing, which were very big deals at the time. And now I look back at them and I go, that was nothing. So
Yeah. The thing that stands out to me the most is the point where you are going through the lawsuit, things are not looking good. You have to put on a brave face, in your words. You are quite literally asking yourself, is everything going to be okay? Is this going to work out? And you have to come in and produce and be a leader for others, and show others that you're confident, because you want them to look at you and feel confident.
Yep.
What helped you get through that and manage that, or who? Get through that time?
That's a great question. Therapy.
Sure, that's awesome.
And I would say that to anybody. Everyone should have a therapist. I have been involved in an organization for a long time that provides a peer group for me of other CEOs of companies that are in Kansas. I'm actually part of 2, one in Kansas City, where the other business owners are not in construction, so they don't know my business, they know their business. And then I'm involved in the national one, where all the members are construction company owners, which helps because they know the business. having people where you have an extreme level of trust and confidence that you can bounce things off of them, and they only care about what's best for you and can help, again, call you on your bullshit and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? That has been incredibly helpful for me. And there are times where they're the one going through the real challenge, and you're the one going, hey, it's going to be okay. Have you thought about this? Can I help you with this or that? Having very smart, very talented business owners and leaders around you that you can connect with is huge. Having, a family. I've got 2 kids that I'm a single dad. Their mom and I went through a divorce, and she unfortunately passed away not long after that.
Sorry.
And so I became a single dad in 2015 when the company was 5 years old. And, those aren't just employees that you have to make happy. Those are human beings that you are literally legally and emotionally responsible for. And when you just go, I've got to just get through this, because I can't hurt my kids. I can't hurt the company. I got to just power through. And having that incentive to get through whatever the challenge is, not only for the 150 or so people that work for the company, but for those 2 people that are the very most important people in my life after what they've been through of losing their mom. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get to the other side.
Yeah. There
was no negotiation. Yeah, there's no option. Exactly.
Wow. I can't imagine. And you're only 5 years old at the company at that point,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Well, luckily, it was doing pretty well at the time. That was before those 2 big hiccups. So, but that was a huge hiccup in life too. When you're affected that much, I think a lot of people think that you have your business life and then your personal life. And the reality is, as a person, we don't, inside our brains and our bodies, we don't compartmentalize those things. It's just our life, right? And so you can't be frustrated at work about something and go home and all of a sudden be happy-go-lucky. It's gonna fall, it's gonna spill over. And so I've just tried to have a relationship with my kids where I go, hey, I might be a little grumpy tonight. I had some bad stuff happen at work. Doesn't mean anything about you guys. Love you. I want to talk to you about homework. I might be a little distracted. I'm sorry. And just try to be as open and honest about that rather than snapping at them, which of course happens. Everybody snaps at their kids, but understanding that emotionally, family, yourself, your business, everything is all really one thing. It's not separate things that you do from 8 to 5 and from 5 to 8. So.
Yeah, that strikes me as just another reason why it's beneficial to start your own company. I mean, like you said before, it's safer to have your own than to work for somebody else.
Yep.
Even just I'm working a job in sales right now, and I just see, like, when I'm doing well at work, outside when I'm with my friends, when I'm talking to my family, I'm a nicer, happier person.
Yep.
And when I'm not doing well and my manager is pissing me off and I don't want to talk to anybody, I don't like that guy. I like the other guy better.
Yep, totally. And the goal is to not ever, that guy's never going to go away. They're always going to be there, right? The goal is to try to minimize the amount of times that it's kind of like the old television show, The Hulk, right? Came out when he got angry. It's trying to control your emotions and keep it in check so that person doesn't come out. But it's also unhealthy to not let your emotions go sometimes. When you are frustrated, you got to be able to say that or have some outlet for that, whether that's, go kickboxing, whatever you're going to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
At what point in the company did you feel like, we're about the roller coaster, but at what point did you feel like this, I feel okay, I feel safe, this is going to work out, this is the thing, and it's going to work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think it was very long into the company before I felt like, okay, this has got legs, like we can make this happen. It might have been as soon as 6 months, honestly.
Okay.
I don't think 6 months in, I would have said, we'll have 150 people doing $220 million in revenue in 10 years. I probably didn't think that yet, but I knew it was good enough, and we had established a base enough that we were going to be fine. We were going to meet our mortgage payments. We're going to be able to raise our kids. We're going to be able to do that. we could start to make decisions, not just on the basis of saving money, but on the basis of what's right for the company.
Mm.
Something my partner and I have always, and we never even talked about this, but it just happened. We've never seen, even though we both own the company 50-50, we have no outside investors. We've never thought about the company as like our own piggy bank or as our own, like if the company makes money, we don't go, oh, we made money. No, the company did. We created this thing. It's like having a child. You were responsible for creating it, but now it's its own thing and you got to respect it. It's got its own personality. It's got its own needs. It's got its own, and so we joke that there will be times where we might be at work and we'll make a $50,000 decision like that because we know the right thing to do. Oh my God, but I'm still going to worry about $500 in my own personal life, right? Because they're two totally separate things. But by about 6 to 8 months in, we were established enough to know that this is going to be, we got this. We can make this thing happen.
And I imagine along the way, like you're watching that steadily build, obviously up and down, but it wasn't like you just woke up in 6 months and you're like, it's okay. Yeah, there was a lot happening.
And like I said, there were still the mornings you woke up and you were going, oh crap, we got this big issue. It's just that those issues, then I look back at them and go, oh, those weren't that big of a deal. But they were at the time. They were existential at the time. So yeah.
Now I know obviously with a company like this, a building company, you're doing big projects, you're managing a lot of people, there's a lot of budget happening there. You're leading people who are putting their livelihoods in your hand. It takes a lot of confidence to do what you've done. And I wonder if it was always there or if you know of when it started and then how you sustain it.
Yeah. I thought a lot about that. I don't think if I went back to my 18-year-old self, I don't think that person would necessarily recognize who I am today. I think that I was, reasonably talented, reasonably good work ethic, but I don't think at that time I would have said, I'm going to be running a company. I'm going to be involved in these things in the city and have pretty high profile, at least in this ecosystem. I don't think I ever would have thought that. I think what happened for me is at every opportunity in my career where I had the chance to try something or was given hey, would you help out with this initiative, whether it was at work or volunteer or, something with my family, whatever, I tended to say yes. And I probably said yes to the point where I've overcommitted myself many times. I feel overcommitted right now. But what saying yes always did, and it sometimes at the expense of being home at night with, family, kids, whatever, it broadened my network. And when more people know you and you're an authentic, likable person, people want to do business with somebody like that. And if you spend 30 years, it only takes 30 years. You spend 30 years being that person. It's amazing how things just happen to land in your lap or things just happen to, but that whole time you have to be somebody that's a giver as well. You have to say, how can I help you? Do you should know this person. You two would really get along. I like to say sometimes my favorite days are the days where I put two people in touch and I have nothing. I get nothing out of it. And I don't do it because I'm hoping something will come along someday. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. I just trust that being the person I am and doing the things I do will benefit me at some point. And I just leave it at that. It was probably mid-career before I realized I thought I had the chops to do something like this. And even then I thought it would be much smaller than it is today. And it's funny because you find yourself, I still today feel like, oh, this is it. This is as big as I'm going, I'm at the pinnacle. I'm probably down slope from here. And, there are people in my life that are like, you still got a lot in you, you're doing the same thing you did back then where you're thinking you've reached it. No, you haven't yet. You've got more to give. And I think I mentioned to you earlier, we spun off and started a new business recently, and it's fun to be back in that entrepreneur seat.
You said your favorite part was the beginning.
Yeah. Although, what's funny is at the beginning, when all the chips are in the middle of the table, the hustle was it was just a drive because it was existential. You had to do it. And so you do anything, you're up at 2 a.m. doing a proposal. You're the one figuring out, what you're going to order for the Friday team lunch, all that, everything. You're doing every detail. After 13 years of a company, you've built a team that's pretty damn good at figuring that stuff out, and everybody knows their role. You start a new business, you're like, oh man, I'm back doing the, figuring out what the logo is going to look like on a hat.
Yeah.
and it's like, I didn't see myself doing that again, but that's what entrepreneurs have to do. They have to be the ones just grinding it out, all the details.
At what point did you hire your first like assistant to help with just miscellaneous?
I, to this day, don't have a devoted, dedicated assistant. We have somebody that at Centric that we call our concierge, who's the person that, visitors see when they first come in the door. And her name's Jackie. She's awesome. And she helps me with, managing my calendar and things like that. But I'll be honest, a lot of what I do, I have a pretty flexible schedule. So I'm able to juggle, if my kids need to get to something, I can. Now, luckily they both have cars, but I could, get out, go do that kind of thing. And my life is pretty much both personal and business all day long. That there's not a time where one stops and the other one starts. You know what I mean? So I've thought about the value that having somebody like a chief of staff, somebody who could kind of be at your elbow and take on special projects and that kind of thing. But I don't think it fits the culture of our company. Our company is more of a, everybody's a doer, and I wouldn't want to change that and try to be, somebody bigger and fancier by having assistants or chiefs of staff and things like that. That's just not who we are. So yeah.
Cool. And I know as I was doing a little bit of research on you beforehand, I saw that you a community within your employees is very important to you. You had set a team that was dedicated to just doing team building activities within your employees.
Yeah.
How important do you feel like that is to community?
Well, I think it's very important. So we call it Team Mojo. And the reason, it's sort of, that's the group that sort of has the mojo for the company, gets us excited about doing things together and that kind of thing. I think it is important. As a company who's going to benefit from the growth and development of its community, right? We're not going to build buildings unless there's growth and success and financial stability. Investing in that is almost helping yourself, right? If you're investing in a community that, whether it's helping with social services or education or the arts or any of those kinds of things, and it is a rising tide, well, guess what? That means more people are going to want to come and be in Kansas City, which means more employers are going to be here, which means more buildings are going to get built. And it's sort of a virtuous cycle. You don't do it because of that. You do it because you believe in community and the strength of community. But if the output on the other side of that belief is something that feeds your business, great. That's awesome. That just means you're part of the whole cycle. And that's the way I've really seen it. Then you have to instill that ethos in others, right? And you have to say, hey, this is important, that we show up at this event, or that we sponsor this gala, or that we serve on boards, volunteer. So some of those things could literally be, we go out and, go to the homeless shelter and feed, people less fortunate, the unhoused, or we are, helping have a gallery opening in this district. We exist in Kansas City. There's a lot of artists and that kind of thing. And we would open up our space and have gallery openings so that people could come in and experience the art. All of that stuff lends itself to a better community. And I believe in that first and foremost. And then if the output of that is beneficial to Centric, all the better.
Yeah. And I saw you like to do a lot within the community. I saw you do everything from your matching student loan payments. You're helping with parents 529 plans.
Yeah.
Are these through programs? Are you actively seeking? What does that look like?
I'll be honest. We have done, and I actually give my business partner a lot of credit for this. He comes up with some of the most creative ideas in our company. We try every year to do something additional for our team members. Whether it's, we do all the holiday parties, all the things, summer picnics, the things that every company does. But we also go, what can really help people out? And so the match that we do, we will say, if you're sending a student to college or paying off student loan debt or saving for it, or you're saving for your healthcare expenses, we will match a certain amount of money that you put in. We have this is one of the most, our favorite benefits is we buy you dinner on your birthday. So any employee goes out on their birthday or around their birthday, they bring their family, and, $200, we'll put towards it. And, as a construction company, we have some very highly educated, compensated people, and we have some, skilled labor. It's so funny seeing those receipts, because they literally will buy dinner and then it's like cocktail, 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 cocktail until they get to $199 and then they stop. It's hilarious. And that literally is one of the most favorite things that we do. And think about that. $200 per person. It's nothing. It's nothing.
For what
And
you're
they love
getting
it.
back.
Yeah, we do what we call Franklin Fridays, which is 3 or 4 times a year. We'll be having a team meeting, have lunch, whatever, and we'll just say it's a Franklin Friday, and that means everybody gets $100 bill. Just enjoy, have a good weekend, And it's those little things that I think, actually, you got to pay a decent salary and have good bonus for performance and 401k and health insurance and all of that. But when you can do those little things, they're really appreciated.
Yeah, and then I know they don't go unnoticed. People know if they have good benefits versus bad benefits. They
Right.
see these things. They're not
Right.
always spoken, but how they
Yep.
feel about you speaks volumes.
Yep, absolutely. The
Um,
biggest one we're about to roll out is and we've told everybody, but we haven't officially done it yet, is we're going to transition to an ESOP. So the company will be 100% owned by the employees rather than by me and Steve. And we're really excited about that, because it gives them the opportunity to see the economic benefit of their work over their lifetime, and have better retirements and better lives. And it frankly allows Steve and me to start to transition, out of the company. And that's not a quick thing. That's probably an 8 to 10 year thing, but it's an orderly process for us really transitioning things to the employees that can then carry it on to the next generation.
I'm not overly familiar with an ESOP. So is it like shares?
Yeah. So the quick kind of synopsis is, it stands for Employee Stock Ownership Program. And what it means is you basically create a trust that will own the shares of the company. We will sell our shares to that trust. That trust is there for the benefit of all the employees in the company. So over time, as you work at the company and grow in salary and promotion and, level and all that kind of stuff, you every year will get a grant of ownership in the company. And over, say, 8 to 10 years, all of the shares will be allocated out to the people who work there. And as long as they stay there for, 5 years or so, a vesting period, or they stay until they retire, they will get the value that they've helped grow and build back out. It's a long-term thing. Doesn't replace salary and bonus of that current year. It's more of just like Steve and I as owners had to wait a long time to sort of reap the benefits of what we started. Same thing. You work, spend your time, make the company better, stock price goes up. You've controlled that yourself, rather than you just owning a share of, a company or a mutual fund. You're in control of helping the company grow. And all the data shows that companies grow faster, more healthy. People feel more pride, sense of ownership. People start having suggestions for how to improve things in the company because they own it and it matters to them. It's going to make them more money. So that's the concept.
And then after that, you will have more time to work on your newer projects.
Hopefully. Yeah. So yeah, we recently over the last few years figured out what we think is a much better way to build apartment buildings and hotels. For the most part, those two kinds of projects. It's basically taking all of the benefits of speed and quality and cost that exists with building out of wood, wood studs, wood frame, and then marrying that with the ability to go higher than a wood frame building can go. So we can go to our developer clients and say, hey, if you use this product that puts the building together with metal, steel, studs that are prefabricated in a warehouse and brought to the site and just put in place, that you'll see economic benefits in a better building. The city will have more density, it'll be more vibrant. And we've had enough people interested in that concept, and we built enough buildings using it that we approached the one of our partners who was building those panels and said, we'd like to invest with you and rebrand the company and take it nationwide. So we recently have done that, and we rolled out 1110 systems last week, actually. So it's brand new.
Wow.
We are taking that to market as we speak. So it's interesting because on the one hand, they're very symbiotic companies, Centric and 1110, but they're different, they're separate. And one is really being involved in the community in Kansas City and knowing people and growing the business of building buildings here. And the other is a manufacturing company that will ship these things all over the country. And I've never done that kind of selling before and development of a company. And so I'm excited about what that opportunity is.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So Kansas City is obviously a huge part of you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me, other than the Chiefs, what are some of the things about Kansas City that you find the most beautiful? I mean, you've literally built it from the ground up.
Well, I wouldn't say I have, but it's cool to be able to have been here long enough to drive around and see things that you've actually had an impact on. Obviously, the Chiefs are special right now. We're living through a magical time to have a team as good as they are, and specifically three people that are really once in a lifetime football coaches and players, quarterback, everything. So that's awesome, and it's great for Kansas City.
Yeah.
But if you come to Kansas City and you're not a football fan and you don't care about the Chiefs, so in a lot of ways, we're like a lot of Midwestern cities. We're welcoming, we're approachable. It's not. I love New York City. It's one of my favorite places in the world, but it's intense, right? I mean, you're in downtown Manhattan. It's an intense place. So Kansas City is, a lot lower scale. Our boulevard system and fountains all over the city are gorgeous. I mean, just driving around the city, they're just the way I get from home to work every day is down beautiful parkway systems. I don't get on the highway. There are highways here, but I don't have to, which is great. There are pockets of Kansas City, our downtown, our River Market, our Crossroads district where I work, and our Country Club Plaza shopping district that are some of the best in kind for these sort of urban pocket neighborhoods. They're vibrant, they're mixed use, people live there, work there, play there. People know each other, they're neighborhoods still. I like that. Growing up in Denver. Denver was a city that embraced high growth more than Kansas City did. Kansas City takes its time to do what Denver did in 10 years. It'll take us 30, but that means we learn the lessons from other cities and try to benefit from that. But we just opened a brand new airport. We're hosting we hosted the NFL draft a few weeks ago, which was a great experience that put a lot of eyes on Kansas City. And one of the biggest things is we were one of, I think there were 12 North American cities that will host World Cup games in 2026 when the FIFA World Cup comes to the North America. And we're the smallest city of all of them. And it's because we have developed a real passion for soccer around our Sporting KC professional soccer team, even to the point that we now have a professional women's soccer team that is having their very own stadium developed and built for women's soccer, which is kind of cool. And when I look at some of the cool things that are going on around Kansas City, that women's soccer stadium is designed by one of my very closest architecture friends, who's a sports architect, and it's being built by my former partner, Courtney Kunkel, her new company, and J.E. Dunn. And so even though I'm not involved in that project, when I drive by it, I feel a connection to it, and I know the owners from, school kids and everything, knowing each other. When I drive around Kansas City, I feel pride that I have either been directly involved or sort of know the backstory behind almost anything that's been done here over the last 20, 30 years. And that's cool. I think you start to like something more, the more you feel like it's yours. And
yeah, I agree.
I feel that way about Kansas City.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you very, very, very much for your time. I really appreciate it. You gave me a lot of great knowledge, and I enjoyed it. I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. I hope we can do it again. And thank you for reaching out to me. I appreciate it. And I really commend you for taking on doing this kind of thing, because a podcast is not easy to do. And I hope you find great guests and have great conversations and learn a lot from it.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.